I was standing in our kitchen in West Vancouver, 6 months pregnant with twins, holding a grocery list I'd written in perfect American Sign Language notation. My hands were shaking so badly the paper fluttered to the floor. Behind me, my husband Graham's voice cut through the silence. Actual spoken words, clear and confident. "Eleanor, we need to talk. I can hear you. I've always been able to hear you." I'd spent the last 2 years communicating with my husband entirely through sign language, notes, and text messages. 2 years of learning ASL until my fingers cramped. 2 years of advocating for accessibility, of fighting with restaurants that wouldn't accommodate us, of leaving my thriving interior design career because client meetings were too complicated with interpretation. 2 years of building what I thought was the most meaningful relationship of my life based on patience, dedication, and deep understanding. And in one sentence, it was all a performance. Let me back up. I need to explain how I got here, to this moment in my kitchen with my entire world fracturing around me. I was 33 years old and profoundly single when my mother staged what I can only describe as an intervention. We were at her house in Kitsilano for Sunday dinner. Me, my older sister Patricia, who had 3 kids and a husband who coached Little League, and my younger sister Margaret, who'd just gotten engaged to a dentist. My mother served her famous butter chicken and then served me up as the main course. "Eleanor, darling, you know I love you," she began, which is how all terrible conversations start. But Patricia's eldest is already 12. You're going to be 40 before you know it. Don't you want a family? Don't you want someone to grow old with? I'd heard this speech approximately 17 times in the past 2 years, each time with increasing urgency. "I have a career, Mum. I have friends. I have a life. You have a condo and a drafting table," she countered. "You're always working. When was your last date? When did you last even try?" Patricia, ever helpful, chimed in. "There's nothing wrong with being focused on your career, Elle, but Mum has a point. You're not getting any younger. The dating pool gets harder in your 30s. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw butter chicken at both of them. Instead, I smiled tightly and said I was perfectly happy, thank you very much, and could we please pass the naan? But the conversation burrowed under my skin like a splinter. On the SkyTrain home, I found myself studying the couples around me, young ones giggling together, older ones sitting in comfortable silence. Was I missing something fundamental? Was there something wrong with me for being content alone? I was still thinking about it 3 weeks later when I attended the Vancouver Real Estate Development Summit. My firm had been hired to design the interiors for a new mixed-use development in Olympic Village, and I needed to network with potential contractors. I wasn't looking for anything personal. I certainly wasn't looking for a husband. Graham Sutherland was giving a keynote speech about sustainable urban development. I noticed him immediately, not because he was handsome, though he was, in that distinguished way some men achieve in their late 30s. Graying temples, strong jawline, expensive suit worn with casual confidence. No, I noticed him because of how he presented. He didn't speak. His presentation was entirely visual, stunning architectural renderings, data visualizations, and occasional title cards. An ASL interpreter stood beside him, translating for the audience, but Graham himself remained silent, occasionally signing to the interpreter for clarification. The presentation was brilliant. His development philosophy centered on creating spaces that serve diverse communities, including those with disabilities. He spoke, or rather signed, about universal design principles, about buildings that didn't just accommodate differences, but celebrated them. During the networking reception afterward, I watched him from across the room. People approached him hesitantly, unsure how to communicate. Some tried sign language, fumbling awkwardly. Most just smiled and nodded and moved away quickly, clearly uncomfortable. I surprised myself by walking over. I didn't know much ASL then, just basic fingerspelling from a weekend workshop I'd taken years ago for a client project. But I spelled out my name slowly, Eleanor. Then I pointed to his presentation screen and made a gesture I hoped conveyed approval. Thumbs up, nodding enthusiastically. His face transformed. The polite networking smile became genuine. He fingerspelled his name back, Graham. Then he pulled out his phone and typed, You liked the presentation? Loved it, I typed back, especially the community integration model. I'm an interior designer. I work on projects like this. We spent the next hour typing on our phones, passing them back and forth. He explained that he'd lost his hearing gradually over 18 months due to Meniere's disease, a disorder of the inner ear. By the time he was 28, he was profoundly deaf. He'd learned sign language, adapted his business, and built what became one of the most successful sustainable development firms in Western Canada. Most people get uncomfortable, he typed. They don't know how to talk to me. They assume I'm less competent. You didn't do that. Why would I? I typed back. Your work speaks for itself. Or, well, you know what I mean. He smiled at that. Actually smiled, not the polite version. It did something to his whole face, made him look younger, more approachable. We exchanged business cards. His had an email and text number, no voice phone. Over the next week, we texted constantly. He asked about my design work. I asked about his development projects. The conversation spiraled into everything else: books, travel, family, dreams. It was the easiest communication I'd ever experienced with anyone. No small talk, no performance. Just honest, thoughtful exchanges. 2 weeks after the summit, he texted, "Would you like to have dinner? I know a place with great food and terrible acoustics, so the noise won't bother me at all." That first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Gastown. Loud, crowded, intimate. We sat across from each other, passing phones back and forth like teenagers. Halfway through dinner, I made a decision. I want to learn ASL properly, I typed. I want to talk to you in your language, not make you constantly use your phone. His expression shifted, surprise, then something deeper I couldn't quite read. You don't have to do that, he typed. This works fine. I want to, I insisted. Give me a month. I enrolled in an intensive ASL course at Vancouver Community College. 4 nights a week, 3 hours each session, plus weekend practice groups. I was easily the oldest person in the class, my fingers cramping as I learned the manual alphabet, basic signs, sentence structure. It was humbling and frustrating and wonderful. Graham was patient. He'd video call me and sign slowly, mouthing words so I could see the connection. He'd send me practice videos. He'd praise my progress with exaggerated enthusiasm that made me laugh. By our 5th date, I could have basic conversations, clumsy, slow, but real. The first time I signed "I like you" instead of typing it, he took my hands in his and kissed my knuckles. We sat in his car in the parking lot of the restaurant, and he signed back, "I more than like you." My mother was thrilled, of course. Finally, a boyfriend. Finally, prospects. She didn't care that he was deaf. She cared that he existed. When I brought Graham to Sunday dinner 2 months into dating, she fawned over him, speaking slowly and loudly until I had to remind her he was deaf, not stupid, and could read lips and understand text perfectly well. Patricia was skeptical at first. After dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Elle, are you sure about this? Dating someone with a disability? It's going to be complicated. Have you really thought this through?" "He's not someone with a disability," I said sharply. "He's Graham. He's brilliant and kind and successful. The deafness is just one part of who he is. I just don't want you settling because of Mum's pressure." "I'm not settling. I'm falling in love." And I was. Completely, deeply, irrevocably. Graham was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. He listened, really listened, in a way hearing people often don't. Our conversations had weight because we couldn't multitask through them. When we were together, we were entirely present with each other. 6 months in, he introduced me to his business partner, David, who was also deaf. We met at Graham's office, a beautiful space in Yaletown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking False Creek. David was gruff and funny, and he tested my ASL skills mercilessly, signing rapidly about construction logistics until I had to beg him to slow down. After David left, Graham pulled me aside. "He likes you," he signed. "He's never liked anyone I've dated." "How many have there been?" I signed back, curious. His face clouded. "Not many. One serious relationship. It didn't end well." Over the next few months, he told me about Claire. They'd met 2 years after he lost his hearing. She was hearing, like me, and she seemed accepting at first. They dated for 18 months. He thought they were building a life together. Then one night, she told him she couldn't do it anymore. She loved him, but she couldn't imagine a future with someone deaf. She couldn't picture raising children without being able to speak to her partner. She couldn't handle the isolation she felt in their relationship. "She left because I'm deaf," Graham signed, his hands sharp and angry. Everything else was fine, but that one thing, she couldn't accept it. "I'm not her," I signed back firmly. "I know," he signed. "You're different. You learned my language. You adapted. You chose me." I thought I understood what he meant then. I didn't. 9 months into our relationship, Graham asked me to move in with him. He owned a house in West Vancouver with stunning views of the water and the mountains. Modern, accessible, beautiful. I was spending most of my time there anyway. But moving in meant giving up my Fairview condo that was walking distance to my office. It meant a longer commute. Graham suggested I could work from home more, reduce my client-facing hours, focus on the design work I loved without the exhausting meetings and site visits. "You're always complaining about difficult clients," he signed. "What if you went freelance? Took only projects you really want? I can support us both. You don't need to hustle like you have been." It was tempting. I was tired. Burnt out from years of building my business, managing demanding clients, dealing with contractors who dismissed my ideas. The thought of stepping back, of having financial security, of focusing on the creative work instead of the business development, it was seductive. "I don't want to depend on you financially," I signed. "That doesn't feel right." "We're partners," he signed. "What's mine is yours. Besides, I need your help. I want to incorporate more universal design principles into my developments. Work with me. Be my in-house design consultant." We compromised. I went part-time at my firm, working 3 days a week from home, and took on consulting projects with Graham's company. I moved into the West Vancouver house. I gave up my condo. Looking back now, I can see how carefully he'd engineered my dependence. At the time, it felt like love, like partnership, like building a life together. 14 months after we started dating, Graham proposed. We were on a weekend trip to Tofino, walking on Long Beach at sunset. He'd packed a picnic, wine, cheese, fresh bread from a local bakery. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink, he knelt in the sand and pulled out a ring. He didn't sign, "Will you marry me?" Instead, he'd learned the words in English and mouthed them carefully, exaggerating each syllable so I could read his lips. "Eleanor, marry me." I cried. Of course I cried. I signed yes and I love you and yes again. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Museum of Anthropology. 50 guests, half of them deaf, half hearing, with interpreters provided for everyone. It was beautiful. My mother wept. My sisters stood beside me as bridesmaids. Graham's business partner David was his best man. During our vows, I signed in ASL while an interpreter spoke for those who needed it. I promised to always listen, even when words aren't spoken. I promise to build a life with you where neither of us is limited by the world's assumptions about what we can do. I promise to choose you, every day, exactly as you are. Graham signed back, his hands shaking slightly. "You saw me when others looked away. You learned my language when others found it too difficult. You chose to build a life that includes me, not despite who I am, but because of all that I am. I promise to never take that gift for granted." I believed every word. At the time, I thought they were true. We honeymooned in Italy, Venice, Florence, Rome. It was magical in unexpected ways. Graham had traveled extensively and knew how to navigate foreign countries as a deaf person. We used phones and translation apps, and we discovered that many Italians were far more comfortable with gesture-based communication than Canadians ever were. We ate incredible food. We visited breathtaking art. We made love in ancient cities and felt like we were the only two people in the world. When we returned to Vancouver, I officially left my firm. Graham wanted me to focus on our life together, on his projects, on eventually starting a family. My partners were disappointed but understanding. They threw me a goodbye party, and I told myself I was making the right choice. I got pregnant 4 months after the wedding. It happened quickly. We weren't even really trying yet, just not preventing. When the test showed 2 lines, I sat in our bathroom with the stick in my hand, terrified and elated in equal measure. I was 34. My mother would be ecstatic. Graham would be thrilled. I walked downstairs to where he was working in his home office, monitoring a construction site via video. I held up the test. He looked at it, then at me, and his face broke into the widest smile I'd ever seen. "We're having a baby?" he signed. "We're having a baby," I signed back. He pulled me into his lap and held me, and I felt his chest moving like he was laughing or crying or both. I'd never felt more loved in my entire life. The pregnancy was complicated from the start. At 8 weeks, the ultrasound revealed twins. At 12 weeks, I developed gestational diabetes. At 16 weeks, I was put on modified bed rest due to threatened early labor. By 20 weeks, I'd gained 40 pounds and could barely walk without ankle swelling. Graham was devoted. He worked from home more. He hired a meal delivery service. He drove me to every doctor's appointment. He rubbed my feet at night and brought me herbal tea and set up the nursery with the care of an architect planning a cathedral. But I was isolated. My old colleagues rarely called anymore. I'd left the firm, and we no longer shared daily projects. My friends from college were busy with their own lives. My sisters visited, but Patricia's kids had activities, and Margaret was planning her wedding. I spent my days on the couch, reading pregnancy books and scrolling through parenting forums and feeling increasingly disconnected from my old life. Graham was attentive, but he was also busy. His company had 3 major projects running simultaneously. He'd leave for site visits early in the morning and return late at night. We'd have dinner together, me signing about the baby's kicking, him signing about contractor problems, and then he'd retreat to his office to catch up on work. I tried not to feel lonely. I tried to remember that this was temporary, that once the babies came, life would be full and chaotic and wonderful. I tried to focus on how lucky I was to have a partner who was financially stable and committed and excited about becoming a father. But some nights, lying in bed while Graham slept beside me, I'd wonder what my life would have been like if I'd never gone to that conference, if I'd never met him. If I'd stayed single and focused on my career like I'd planned, I felt guilty for even thinking it. At 24 weeks, my doctor recommended I stop working entirely. The babies were growing well, but I was exhausted, and the risk of early labor was too high. Graham agreed immediately. He'd handle everything. I just needed to focus on staying healthy. So I stopped. Stopped working, stopped checking emails, stopped pretending I was contributing anything beyond growing 2 humans inside my body. My world narrowed to our house, our bedroom, our couch, Graham, my doctor, my body, and the babies. I was 6 months pregnant when everything shattered. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd gotten up to make breakfast, granola with yogurt and fresh berries, decaf coffee, the same thing I ate every morning. Graham had left early for a site inspection. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a lawnmower from a neighbor's yard. I was writing a grocery list on the whiteboard we kept on the fridge. I'd gotten used to writing everything down, planning ahead, staying organized. I wrote, milk, eggs, bread, chicken, spinach. And then I heard it. The front door opening, Graham's footsteps in the hallway, his voice clear and precise. "Eleanor, are you home?" His voice. I stood frozen, marker in hand, staring at the whiteboard. Maybe I'd imagined it. Pregnancy brain, hormones. I'd been sleeping poorly for weeks. Maybe I'd hallucinated. Then he walked into the kitchen, phone to his ear, speaking. "Yeah, I'll review the budget this afternoon. Tell them we need a 30-day extension on the permits." "No, that's not negotiable. I have to go. I'll call you back." He ended the call. He looked at me. For 3 seconds, we stared at each other. Then I found my voice. "What? What are you doing?" "Eleanor," he started. "You're talking," I said, and my voice sounded strange, high-pitched and sharp. "You're on the phone. You're speaking." He set his phone down on the counter carefully. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I was shouting now, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Explain that you're not deaf? Explain that you've been lying to me for 2 years? I wasn't lying, he said. His voice was deep, cultured, the voice of someone educated and confident, the voice of a stranger. Not exactly, it's complicated. Don't you dare, I said. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the marker. It clattered across the tile floor. Don't you dare tell me it's complicated. You let me learn sign language. You let me change my entire life. You let me believe. I couldn't finish. The enormity of it was crushing me. Everything had been a lie. I lost my hearing, he said quickly. That part was true. The Meniere's disease, the gradual hearing loss, that all happened. But I got treatment. Cochlear implant surgery 2 years ago, before I met you. It restored most of my hearing. I can hear almost everything now. Then why? I demanded. Why keep pretending? Why let me learn ASL? Why marry me thinking you were deaf? His face crumpled. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. Because of Claire, your ex-girlfriend? She left me because I was deaf, he said. We'd been together 1.5 years. I thought we were in love. I thought she accepted me. Then one night she told me she couldn't do it. She couldn't imagine her life with someone who couldn't hear. She said she'd tried, but she just couldn't picture raising kids that way, growing old that way. She left because of my disability. So you got the implant, I said slowly. I got the implant. And 6 months later, I met someone new at a business conference. Beautiful woman, very interested, very charming. We dated for 2 months before I realized she'd looked up my net worth online. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in Graham Sutherland, successful developer, millionaire, the money. So you started pretending to be deaf again to test people, to see if they were, what, good enough? To see if they were real, he said desperately. Don't you understand? Claire left because I had a disability. Sarah only wanted me because I had money. I needed to know if someone could love me for who I actually am. For me, not for what I can do or what I can provide. But you lied, I said. You've been lying to me every single day for 2 years. You watched me struggle to learn sign language. You watched me give up my career. You watched me... My voice broke. I pressed my hands to my stomach, feeling the babies shift and kick inside me. You let me marry you thinking you were deaf, I whispered. You let me get pregnant thinking our children would have a deaf father, that I'd need to teach them ASL from birth, that our whole lives would be built around accommodating your disability. And it was all fake. All of it. My feelings weren't fake, Graham said. He stepped toward me, and I stepped back. Eleanor, everything I feel for you is real. You're the only person who ever saw past everything else. You didn't care that I was deaf. You didn't care that I had money. You just loved me. That's what I needed to know. Get out, I said. What? Get out of this house. Get out right now. Eleanor, please. Get out! I was screaming, crying, shaking so hard I had to grip the counter to stay upright. You lied to me. You stole 2 years of my life. You made me give up everything based on a lie. How am I supposed to trust anything about us? How do I even know you actually love me, or if this is all just some sick experiment? It's not. I said, get out. He left, grabbed his keys, grabbed his wallet, walked out the front door without another word. I heard his car start, heard him drive away. Then I sank to the kitchen floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. I don't remember much of the next 48 hours. I know I called my sister Patricia, sobbing so hard she couldn't understand me. She came over with Margaret. They found me on the bathroom floor, still wearing the same clothes, face swollen from crying. They helped me into bed. They brought me water and crackers and sat with me while I told them everything. He lied, Patricia kept saying. That son of a bitch lied to you. But Margaret, ever the peacemaker, asked quietly, did he ever say he couldn't hear? Did he ever explicitly claim to be deaf? I thought about it, tried to remember our first conversation, our first dates, the early months. He'd never said, I am deaf. He'd said he'd lost his hearing to Meniere's disease. He'd used sign language. He'd acted like someone who couldn't hear. But had he ever actually claimed it in words? He lied by omission, Patricia said firmly. Same thing. The calls and texts started that evening. Graham tried everything. Voice calls, I didn't answer. Text messages, I didn't respond. Signed video messages, I deleted without watching. He left notes at the door. He sent flowers with cards begging me to talk to him. I refused. I couldn't. Every time I thought about facing him, about hearing his voice, about acknowledging that the past 2 years had been built on deception, I felt like I was drowning. My doctor was concerned. The stress was affecting the babies. My blood pressure spiked. I developed symptoms of pre-eclampsia. At 28 weeks, I was hospitalized for monitoring. Graham showed up at the hospital. Patricia literally blocked the door to my room. She doesn't want to see you, she told him. I just need to explain, he pleaded. I need to make her understand. You lied to my sister for 2 years. There's nothing to understand. I love her, he said. I love her more than anything. Please. The babies are her priority right now. Patricia cut him off. Not you. Leave. He left an envelope with the nurse. Inside was a handwritten letter, pages and pages of explanation, apology, justification. I read it once and then tore it up. I spent 3 days in the hospital before my blood pressure stabilized enough to go home. Patricia and Margaret took turns staying with me. My mother came too, though she mostly fluttered around making tea and wringing her hands and muttering about that man who'd done this to her daughter. On the 4th day, my doctor sat down beside my hospital bed. Eleanor, she said gently, I know this is incredibly difficult, but you need to think about your babies. This level of stress isn't sustainable. You're at risk for early labor, and your blood pressure is dangerously high. You need to find a way to manage your emotional state. How? I demanded. How am I supposed to manage when my entire marriage is a lie? Therapy, she said. Please. For your babies, if not for yourself. So I started therapy. Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychologist who specialized in relationship trauma and prenatal mental health. 3 times a week, I sat in her office and tried to untangle the mess of my feelings. Let me ask you something, Dr. Chen said during our 2nd session. When you married Graham, what did you love about him? Everything, I said. His intelligence, his kindness, his dedication to his work, the way he made me feel seen and valued. His deafness? She asked quietly. I paused. No, not his deafness. His deafness was just part of him, something we navigated together. Did you marry him because he was deaf? Of course not. Did being deaf make him less attractive to you? No. If anything, I stopped, realizing what I was about to admit. If anything, it made him more attractive. It made him safe. Safe how? And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding. My mother spent 2 years telling me I was too picky, too career-focused, too intimidating to men, I said slowly. She said I needed to be more accommodating, more flexible, more willing to compromise. When I met Graham, he felt like the opposite of all those awful dates with insecure men who were threatened by my success. He didn't care about any of that. He just needed me. My help, my patience, my willingness to adapt. It felt good to be needed like that. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Eleanor, do you think maybe you used Graham's deafness as much as he used you? I wanted to argue. I wanted to say it was different, that I'd done nothing wrong, that I was the victim here. But she was right. I married him partly because he was deaf, I admitted, because it made me feel valuable, because it meant I was adapting for him, not the other way around, because it gave me a reason for changing my life that wasn't about being afraid of ending up alone. We sat in silence for a long moment. That doesn't excuse what he did, Dr. Chen said finally. He lied to you. He manipulated you. Those things are real and serious. But it might help to recognize that your relationship was more complicated than liar and victim. You both went into this marriage with your own reasons, your own needs, your own partial truths. Over the next month, I started to piece together a fuller picture. Graham had been deeply traumatized by Claire leaving. He'd internalized the belief that people would only reject him for his disability or use him for his money, nothing in between. So he'd created a test, An elaborate, years-long test to find someone who would love him despite perceived limitations. And I had failed my mother's test, the test of being married by 35, of being settled and stable and conventional. So I'd found someone whose needs made my life changes seem noble instead of desperate. We'd both been using each other, in different ways. At 30 weeks pregnant, I finally agreed to meet Graham for a conversation. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop near the hospital. Patricia insisted on coming and sitting at a nearby table, just in case. Graham looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His hair was unkempt. He had circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept in weeks. We sat across from each other in silence for a long moment. Then he started talking. "I know what I did was wrong," he said quietly. "I know I hurt you in ways I can never fully repair. I let you change your entire life based on a lie. I stole your agency to make informed choices. I was so focused on protecting myself from being hurt again that I hurt you instead." "Yes," I said. "You did. But I need you to know that my feelings for you were never a lie. Everything I told you about loving you, about wanting to build a life with you, about being grateful for who you are, all of that was true. The only lie was about my hearing. That's not a small lie, Graham." I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. "Claire destroyed me. When she left, she said she loved me, but she couldn't be with someone deaf. Do you understand how that feels? To have someone say, 'I love you,' but not enough to deal with this part of you. It made me hate myself. Made me hate the disability that defined me in everyone else's eyes. So you got the cochlear implant." I got the implant. And then I tried dating again, as someone who could hear, and the first person I met only cared about my money. I felt like there was no version of myself that someone could actually love for me. Either I was too broken, or I was just a wallet. "So you created a test," I said. "I created a test. I needed to know if someone could see past both things, past the disability and past the money. I needed to know if someone would choose me, Graham, just as a person. But I didn't know who Graham actually was," I pointed out. "I thought Graham was deaf. I thought I was choosing someone who needed me to adapt and accommodate. Was that the real you?" He flinched. "That's the question I can't answer, because I don't know anymore. I spent so long pretending that I don't know which parts of me are real." I took a sip of my decaf latte. The babies were kicking, both of them. A rolling wave of movement across my belly. Graham's eyes tracked the movement. "Can I?" He hesitated. "Can I feel them?" I should have said no. I should have maintained boundaries. But I was tired and pregnant, and these were his children too. No matter how betrayed I felt, I took his hand and placed it on my stomach. The babies kicked against his palm, his face transformed, wonder and sadness and love all mixed together. A tear rolled down his cheek. "They're real," he whispered. "Our babies are real." "Yes," I said. "They're real, and they deserve parents who are honest with each other. They deserve a foundation that isn't built on lies." "I know. I want that too. Eleanor, I will do anything to earn back your trust. Couples therapy, individual therapy, whatever you need. I will prove to you every single day for the rest of my life that I love you. The real you, not because you learned sign language or gave up your career or adapted to my needs, but because you're brilliant and strong and compassionate, and you make me want to be better than I am." I looked at him for a long moment, tried to see past my anger and hurt to the person underneath. Was there anything salvageable here? Anything worth fighting for? "I need time," I said finally. "I need space to figure out who I am outside of being your wife, outside of being the person who accommodated your disability. I need to know if I can trust you again, and I can't do that while we're living together." "Okay," he said immediately. "Okay, whatever you need. I'll stay somewhere else. I'll give you all the space you want. Just, please don't give up on us completely. Please give us a chance to rebuild." I didn't promise him anything, but I didn't say no either. We started couples therapy 2 weeks later. Dr. Chen referred us to Dr. James Okafor, a psychologist who specialized in relational trauma and rebuilding trust. 3 times a week, Graham and I sat in his office and worked through the wreckage of our marriage. "It was brutal, doctor," Okafor didn't let either of us hide behind excuses or justifications. He made Graham articulate exactly how he'd manipulated me, the deliberate choices he'd made, the moments he could have told me the truth but didn't. He made me acknowledge my own complicity, the ways I'd used Graham's disability to feel needed, the ways I'd avoided dealing with my own fears about aging and being alone. "You both entered this marriage with unresolved trauma," Dr. Okafor said. "Graham's trauma around rejection and Claire's abandonment, Eleanor's trauma around family pressure and feeling not good enough as you were. You found each other at a moment when you both needed validation, and you each provided it in dysfunctional ways. So what do we do now?" I asked. "Now you decide if you want to build something real," he said. "Not based on tests or needs or fear, based on honest knowledge of who each other actually is, flaws and all. That takes time. That takes vulnerability. And there's no guarantee it will work." Graham moved into a hotel downtown. He came to every therapy session. He called every morning to check on me and the babies. Voice calls now, his actual voice, which I was slowly getting used to. He sent me articles about postpartum planning and baby gear recommendations. He asked permission before showing up at the house, and he left immediately when I asked him to. Slowly, incrementally, I started to see him as a real person instead of as my betrayer. He was flawed and traumatized and had made terrible choices. But he was also genuinely remorseful, willing to do the work, committed to change. At 32 weeks, I let him come to a doctor's appointment. We saw the babies on the ultrasound, 2 girls, healthy and active. The doctor said they were measuring well, and if I could make it to 36 weeks, we'd be in good shape. Graham cried watching the screen, reached for my hand. I let him hold it. At 34 weeks, I agreed to try a mediated conversation at home. Graham came over with dinner from my favorite Thai place. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had exploded, and talked. "Tell me about the cochlear implant," I said. "I want to understand the medical reality." He explained the surgery, the recovery, the activation process, how it wasn't like flipping a switch. His brain had to relearn how to process sound, how some sounds were still difficult, especially in crowded spaces, how he still used lip reading sometimes, and how he'd kept up with ASL because it was genuinely easier in some contexts. "Can you take it off?" I asked. He showed me the external processor behind his ear, removed it. Instantly, he couldn't hear me. I signed, "Can you hear me now?" He shook his head. I signed, "This is what I thought our life would always be like." He put the processor back on. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you made all those changes thinking this was permanent." "I don't regret learning ASL," I admitted. "I love sign language. I love being able to communicate in a different way. I just wish I'd known I was learning it by choice, not out of necessity." "Is there anything else?" he asked. "Anything else you need to know about me, the real me?" So I asked questions. About his childhood, only child. Parents died in a car accident when he was 25. About his business started small, got lucky with one development, built from there. About his wealth, comfortable but not billionaire level. The house and lifestyle were sustainable, but he did have to work. About his friendships, mostly colleagues, a few close friends from college who knew the truth about his hearing. "David knows," I realized. "Your business partner. He's actually deaf, but he knows you're not. He knows. He's the one who encouraged me to tell you after the first month. He said I was playing with fire." He was right. I asked about other women he'd dated. There had been 2 between Claire and me, both brief. Both ended when he realized they were either uncomfortable with his disability or too interested in his money. "Why did you think I was different?" I asked. "Because you looked annoyed when you first approached me at that conference," he said. "Not pitying, not curious, annoyed. Like you were irritated that people were avoiding me because of something as stupid as not being able to hear. You treated me like a person immediately, not a tragedy or a curiosity. And then you decided to learn ASL, not because I asked, but because you wanted to communicate better. You took initiative. You made choices. You didn't wait for me to accommodate you. You accommodated yourself." I thought about that. It was true. I had been annoyed at that conference. annoyed at people's discomfort, their awkwardness, their inability to see past one characteristic. I think I might have been overcompensating, I admitted, proving I wasn't like them, proving I was better, more accepting, more willing to adapt. Maybe. But you were also genuinely kind, genuinely interested. You asked about my work, not about my hearing. You wanted to know my thoughts, not my tragic backstory. We talked for 3 hours that night. When he left, I felt exhausted but slightly lighter, like maybe there was a path forward, even if I couldn't see it clearly yet. The babies came at 37 weeks. My water broke at 2 a.m., and I called Graham from the hospital. He arrived within 20 minutes, breathless and terrified. Patricia and Margaret came too, but I asked them to wait outside when it was time to push. "I want him here," I told Patricia when she protested. "He's their father. Whatever else is true, he's their father." 12 hours of labor. 2 beautiful, healthy baby girls. Olivia arrived first, screaming immediately. Charlotte came 6 minutes later, quieter and more contemplative. Graham cut both umbilical cords with shaking hands. He held each daughter with the carefulness of someone holding something infinitely precious and infinitely fragile. He cried when they wrapped their tiny fingers around his thumbs. "They're perfect," he whispered. "Eleanor, they're perfect." And in that moment, surrounded by the mess and pain and beauty of birth, I felt something shift. These babies deserved parents who loved each other. Not perfectly, not without history or hurt, but genuinely. They deserved a family built on truth. "We have a lot of work to do," I told Graham as we sat together in my hospital room, each holding a sleeping baby. "This doesn't fix everything." "I know," he said softly, "but I'm not going anywhere. I will earn your trust again every single day." The first months with newborn twins were chaos. Sleep deprivation, endless feeding and changing, learning to coordinate 2 tiny humans' needs simultaneously. Graham moved back into the house, into the guest room, but back. We needed all hands on deck, and whatever our issues, he was a devoted father. We kept going to therapy, kept working through the layers of hurt and deception and misunderstanding. Dr. Okafor helped us develop tools for communication, for checking in with each other, for naming when old patterns were emerging. Graham did concrete things to rebuild trust. He gave me complete access to his finances, showed me every account and investment. He introduced me to all his friends and colleagues properly, without the deaf act. He started learning how to be fully himself, without hiding behind any performance. I did my own work too. I started painting again, something I'd loved in art school but abandoned years ago. I took an online interior design course to refresh my skills. I started reaching out to old colleagues about possible collaborations. I worked on separating my identity from being Graham's wife or the twins' mother and reclaiming Eleanor the individual. 6 months after the twins were born, we went away for a weekend without them. Patricia watched Olivia and Charlotte, and Graham and I drove to Whistler. We stayed in a small inn, hiked mountain trails, sat by a fireplace drinking wine. "Do you still love me?" Graham asked on the second night. "The real me? Not the person you thought I was, but who I actually am?" I thought about it honestly. Did I love the man sitting across from me, flawed, traumatized, capable of both deep love and deep deception? "Yes," I said, "but differently. I don't love you the way I did when we first married. That love was based on a fantasy version of us. This love is harder, more complicated, but it's real." "Is it enough?" he asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to keep trying." We renewed our vows when the twins were a year old. A small ceremony, just immediate family, in our backyard. This time, there were no interpreters, no sign language, just Graham's voice, clear and steady, saying, "Eleanor, I stand before you today as myself, imperfect, flawed, but entirely honest. I promise never to hide from you again. I promise to trust you with all of who I am, even the parts I'm ashamed of. I promise to build a life with you based on truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable." I spoke my vows in return. "Graham, I choose you, with eyes wide open. I choose you knowing your capacity for both love and fear. I choose to build a life where we both show up fully, without pretense or performance. I choose to keep choosing you every day, even when it's hard. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had hard days. Days when I was angry about the lost years, about the sacrifices I'd made based on false premises. Days when Graham retreated into old patterns of hiding or testing. Days when we had to actively work to remember why we were doing this. But we had our daughters. We had honesty, finally. We had a foundation that was real. Now, at 65, I look back at that younger version of myself, 33, and desperate for validation, learning sign language in a windowless classroom, marrying a man whose voice she'd never heard. I have compassion for her. She was doing her best with the tools she had. Graham and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary last month. Our daughters are 28 now. Olivia is an architect. Yes, I cried when she chose that path. And Charlotte is studying disability rights law. We have a good life, an honest life. Graham still uses his cochlear implant, but we've kept up with ASL as a family. All 4 of us are fluent. It's part of how we communicate, especially when the girls want to talk to each other across a crowded room or when Graham's implant battery dies at inconvenient moments. I never went back to interior design full-time, but I consult on universal design projects and teach part-time at Emily Carr University. I paint in my studio every morning. I have an identity that's separate from being anyone's wife or mother. We're not perfect. We've been to therapy on and off over the years, whenever old patterns start creeping back. But we're real, we're honest. And that, I've learned, is more valuable than any fantasy of perfection. Sometimes young couples ask us for advice. How did we make it work? How did we overcome such a profound betrayal? And I tell them, there's no easy answer. We chose to stay. We chose to do the work. We chose to believe that people can change, that relationships can heal, that truth is worth fighting for even when it's painful. But I also tell them this: don't ever give up your entire identity for another person. Don't ever change your life based on someone else's needs without knowing the full truth. Love should expand who you are, not diminish you. And if someone tests you, if they create elaborate scenarios to see if you measure up, ask yourself, do you want to spend your life proving you're worthy, or do you want a partner who knows your worth without tests? Graham and I got lucky. We did the work. We found our way back to each other through honesty and therapy and sheer stubborn determination. But not every story ends this way. Some betrayals are too deep to overcome. Some relationships aren't meant to be salvaged. I tell people, trust your gut. Do the work if it feels worth it. But don't sacrifice yourself on the altar of someone else's trauma. You deserve better than that. We all do. That kitchen in West Vancouver, where Graham's voice first shattered my world, is still our kitchen. We've remodeled it twice over the years, but I can still stand in that exact spot where I dropped the grocery list and remember how it felt to have everything I believed crack open. I'm grateful for that moment now. Not because it was beautiful or meaningful or part of some grand plan, but because it was true. Finally, after 2 years of performance, something true broke through. And truth, painful as it was, gave us the chance to build something real. That's all any of us can hope for, really. Not perfection, not fantasy. Just truth and the courage to face it together.